Welcome! This video tutorial offers a comprehensive guide for beginners on how to create a pivot table in Excel. The pivot table serves as a powerful tool through which we can analyze and summarize even large amounts of data in a quick and very convenient way. All that without the necessity to know complicated Excel functions. How great is that? Let's have a look at how to create a pivot table in Excel now. Hello, and welcome to EasyClick Academy. My name's Maria, and together with our EasyClick team, we're here to make sure you'll be able to use Excel in a quick and easy way, thanks to our digestible video tutorials. To create a pivot table in Excel, it might be a good idea to start with a thorough source data preparation. So, we'll organize the source data according to the following 3 steps. Step 1. Check for empty rows or columns in the source data table. Empty rows and columns can use various issues or even affect the correctness of results. If there are any empty rows or columns in the data table, but it's not many, you can remove them in a simple way. Right-click on an empty row or column and click on Delete. But if there are hundreds or even thousands of empty rows or columns in the data table, use the little trick you can learn in our EasyClick Academy video tutorial titled How to Remove Blank Rows in Excel. The link to the video is in the description below. In the second step, we need to make sure that each column in the source data table has got its own header, which is basically the title, thanks to which we'll always know what sort of data the column contains. Our columns are marked Date, Category, Sales, and Store. And here's the final step of the preparation. Step 3. We format the source data as a table. This ensures better data processing, and it helps us avoid mistakes if we want to make additions to the source data later. So let's format the data as a table now. First, click anywhere into the source data area, then go to the Insert tab and find and click on Table. A window pops up, which will move over here now. There are 2 bits of information that need to be defined. The first is the range of data to be included in the table. Because we've already clicked into the source data area, Excel provides us with a suggestion for the data range we most probably want to include in the table. We double-check it, just in case, and yes, it's correct, starting with the cell B1 up to the cell E106 including, which is indicated by this green dotted line. If you need to change the range for any reason, you can do so using this little button on the right. As soon as the range has been set correctly, we need to tick this box here, which says that the table's got headers. After clicking on OK, we've got the data formatted as a table, which we can also spot up here. A new tab called Table Design has been added. For more details on how to format a table and how to use various helpful features in the Table Design tab, watch a separate video tutorial by EasyClick Academy titled How to Make a Table in Excel. Link to the video is provided in the description below. To access the Table Design tab is pretty easy. If you click outside the data table, it disappears. Once you click back into the table, you'll see it up in the ribbon again. To come up with an appropriate table title is also very useful. We can type, for instance, Sales Data here in the field Table Name. Assigning a title to a table means you'll gain a better overview of the data you're working with. As soon as we've finished the source data preparation, according to the 3 steps we've just discussed, it's time to start working on the pivot table itself. So, let's get into it now. We click anywhere into the source data area, then we click on the Insert tab, and here we can decide between 2 options. The first, and also the quick one, is to click on the option Recommended Pivot Tables. Excel then shows several pivot tables as suggestions that might be useful for you. For example, here we've got Sums of Sales by Category. This is the first recommended pivot table. The second one shows Sums of Sales by Store. If these suggestions work for you, select one and click on OK down here. The pivot table simply appears in a separate sheet, and you can modify it according to what you need. We'll take a look at how to do this shortly. But now, let's go back to Sheet 1, where we store the source data And let's explore the other, more advanced option to create a pivot table in Excel. So we're not going the predefined way now, but we'll create a pivot table ourselves, and we'll do it basically from scratch. Again, we click into the source data area, go to the Insert tab, but here we select the other option, Pivot Table. As you can see, we can create a pivot table in Excel using the data we've got stored directly in an Excel spreadsheet. But we can also use data from various external sources. Using external sources is, however, a more advanced topic, which we may elaborate on in one of our further video tutorials. Now, we're going to focus on how to create a pivot table from the source data we store directly in an Excel sheet. So, we select the option From Table, Range, Now, and we can move on. Here, we've got a new pop-up window where we need to define the following two details. First, we need to specify which data should be used to create the pivot table. Since we formatted the data as a table earlier, Excel shows it as the first option. Here, we can see the title Sales Data, which we entered as a table name earlier. Of course, this button on the right serves to specify any data range to create a pivot table if needed. However, to simply type up a specific range reference directly into the field can cause issues if we decide to add some rows or columns into the source data table later on. The range would have to be updated manually after any addition. But if we formatted the data as a table, Excel will always include everything from the data table area in the pivot table. So, if we add some new rows or columns, they'll be incorporated in the source data table and included in the pivot table too. We can explore how new data can be added in a separate video tutorial. Now, it's important to keep in mind that the data should be formatted as a table in the source data preparation phase. In this case, we make sure that the table title Sales Data appears in the field, and we can move on then. Below, we can choose whether we want the pivot table to be placed in a new or an existing worksheet. For convenience, we select a new worksheet here. Moving on, we don't necessarily have to tick the option Add this data to the data model. Ticking this box leads to more advanced analyses, which we can discuss in separate video tutorials. If you'd like to know more about this topic and learn new, more advanced tips and tricks for working with a pivot table, leave us a note in the comments section below, and we'll be happy to prepare more video tutorials for you. But now, we're not going to discuss more advanced options, so we'll leave the box blank and move on. Once everything's been set and defined, we click on OK, and here comes a new sheet with everything ready for us to create a pivot table just according to our needs. On the right, there are pivot table fields, where we can find so-called fields, which actually is a list of our column headers in the source data table. So we can see here all the titles we've entered during the source data preparation phase. We're going to work with these further when creating the pivot table. But before we get to that, let's go through all the sections we can see here on the pane. Below are 4 areas: filters, columns, rows, and values. These are crucial if we want to process the data as a pivot table in a number of ways. We're going to explore how and when to use each area in a moment. So, the pane Pivot Table Fields on the right serves for building a pivot table, and here on the left, we'll be able to see the actual pivot table. There's also a new tab, Pivot Table Analyze, that's appeared up here in the ribbon. We can use the tab when creating pivot tables. So it's time to have a look at how to use all this to create a pivot table according to what we need. Let's say we want to create a report which would show sums of sales by store. So we tick the box next to Store, and we can immediately see the 3 stores from our source data table included in the pivot table. Now, when we tick Sales, we see the total sales for each store. If we want to display the information about sales in each product category for each store, we tick Category in the part of the pane with fields, and here we go. For each store, there's an overview of sales by category. These data can be made visible, or we can hide them simply through the button that's just appeared in the pivot table next to each store name. And here's an important detail to remember. You can see here on the right that the fields store and category have been assigned to the area rows. That makes them appear in rows in the pivot table. If needed, we can move, for example, category to the area columns through a simple drag and drop. And here's the modified pivot table. Product categories like accessories, computers, smartphones, and others now show in columns. Thanks to this simple drag and drop move, we can create the pivot table according to our needs, showing just the data we need to show in the way we want them to show. Basically, whatever we need to display in rows, we drag and drop to rows, and whatever we want to show in columns, we drag and drop to columns. And of course, we can change this anytime. So category can be moved back to rows again. Or if we don't need to include these values in the pivot table, we can simply drag and drop the field anywhere on the screen, and it'll be removed from the pivot table. Now we can move on and have a look at the area called values. There are some interesting tricks that we can try out here, so let's have a look. Let's take the field Sales and drag and drop it to the Values area again. If you notice column C, it contains the copy of the sum of sales dataset, and the same item is also included in the Values area down here on the right. So now we're working with two columns containing the sum of sales dataset in the pivot table. If we click anywhere in column C and then do a right click, we can use the option Summarize Values By, or right below, there's the option Show Values As. Both options allow us to display the values of the dataset in various ways. Here, we'll go ahead and display the values as percentage of grand total. Now, the pivot table shows not only the exact number representing the sum of sales for each store, but it also displays these values as the exact percentage that the sum of sales makes of the grand total. This is how we can easily use numerous options to summarize values or display them in various ways. Let's move on now and take a look at the fourth area, Filters, which offers interesting ways to filter the source data. For example, we can take the column Category from the list and drag and drop it to Filters. Excel now offers the possibility to filter the data based on category right above the pivot table. Now, when we click on the Filter button and tick the option Select Multiple Items, we can quickly and conveniently filter the sales for any product category. Let's select TVs now. Press OK, and here we are looking at the TV's sales numbers for each of the three stores. This way we can individually filter any category, but we can also do this with multiple categories at the same time. Let's do multiple categories with smartphones and tablets, for instance. And here they are. This is a very effective way to filter data and to get the information we need as quickly as possible. If we don't need the filter anymore, we can remove it from the pivot table with no effort at all. We just click anywhere within the pivot table area to see the pane on the right, and we use drag and drop to remove the column Category from Filters. And here we go again, the filter's gone. But that's not all. Let's have a look at several other tips thanks to which you'll be able to make more effective pivot tables. First, let's talk a little bit about some basics around the pivot table. If you click anywhere outside the pivot table area, the pane on the right, as well as the pivot table tab, disappear. If you click back into the pivot table area, the pane on the right and the pivot table tab show again, ready to be used. To rewrite a header in the pivot table, simply click into the cell which stores the header name and rewrite the text as needed. Here, we're rewriting the cell C3 to percentage of sales, and the header has immediately changed in the pivot table as well as in the pane on the right. So, we can navigate through the data more easily now. To change number formatting in the pivot table is no rocket science either. Let's say we want to format the column Sales. So, we select the column, then we right-click and select the option Number Format. Here we can set the currency, and we can choose the number of decimal places we want to display. In this case, none. We keep the dollar symbol, press OK, and that's it. The numbers in the pivot table now show just as we formatted them a moment ago. To change the table design, click anywhere within the table area again. Go to the Design tab and use this roll-down menu to choose the style you like best, or make your own using the option down here. In this case, we'll go for the dark blue one, so we can click on it, and here comes the table in all its beauty. And to sort data in the table largest to smallest, or vice versa, is also child's play. Let's click on the column that contains the data we want to sort. Then we right-click again and look for the option Sort. Now we can choose whether we want to sort the values smallest to largest or the opposite way. We go for largest to smallest, and we can immediately see the largest sum of sales made by Store 2, whereas the smallest sum of sales shows right next to Store 3. And before we wrap it up, here comes yet another important detail. When working with pivot tables, one must keep in mind that if something changes in the source data, it won't be reflected automatically in the created pivot table. So let's go through how to update source data correctly together, which is actually easier done than it sounds. First, we need to go back to our source data table and change the sum of sales in Store 2 for the category smartphones to $56,321 US. Now, when we click back to Sheet 3, where there's our pivot table, nothing changed, obviously. That's because the pivot table needs to be refreshed. To do that, we click anywhere within the table area again to open the Pivot Table tab, where we can find the button Refresh, which we need to press. Excel now revises the source data and updates the pivot table. Well, that was it for today. We've seen plenty of helpful tricks on how to create and work with pivot tables. Now, just find the right opportunity to use the knowledge. Create your own pivot table and let us know how you did. Share your thoughts and ideas in the comments section below. We can't wait to hear from you. If you found this tutorial helpful, give us a like and watch other video tutorials by EasyClick Academy. Learn how to use Excel in a quick and easy way. Is this your first time on EasyClick? We'll be more than happy to welcome you in our online community. Hit that subscribe button and join the Easy Clickers. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.